The evening that changed everything began with a joke that no one was supposed to take seriously. In the exclusive Golden Leaf restaurant, Maxwell Pierce, the arrogant billionaire tech mogul, was entertaining his business associates. He had reserved the entire restaurant for his gathering, a power move he often made when visiting small towns. Maxwell noticed an elderly woman serving at the next table. She was in her late 60s, with silver hair neatly pulled back in a simple bun. Her name tag read Eleanor. What caught Maxwell's attention was the old violin case she had placed near the staff entrance. "You there, Eleanor, is it?" Maxwell called out. The restaurant fell silent as all eyes turned to the billionaire and the elderly waitress. Eleanor paused in her work and looked up. "Yes, sir?" Maxwell gestured toward the violin case. "I see you have a violin. Do you actually play that thing, or is it just for decoration?" His tone was mocking, and several people at his table chuckled. "Yes, I do play, sir," Eleanor replied, her face remaining composed. "How charming," said Maxwell with exaggerated interest. "A waitress who plays the violin. What do you play? Mary Had a Little Lamb? Or have you advanced to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star?" More laughs rippled around the table. A smirk formed on Maxwell's lips. He was bored and saw an opportunity for entertainment. "Well then, why don't you give us a little performance? I'm sure we could all use some local culture." The way he emphasized the word local made it clear he wasn't expecting much. The restaurant manager stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Pierce, our staff isn't required to." "I'll pay extra," Maxwell interrupted, pulling out his wallet and placing several $100 bills on the table. "Consider it a special request from your most valuable customer." He turned back to Eleanor. "Unless, of course, you're not as good as you think you are." The challenge hung in the air. Eleanor looked at the money, then at the expectant faces around her. Some guests looked embarrassed for her, others amused at what they assumed would be an awkward performance. For a moment, Eleanor seemed to be weighing her options. Then, something subtle changed in her posture, a straightening of the spine, a slight lifting of the chin. "I would be happy to play for you, sir," Eleanor said quietly, surprising everyone with both her acceptance and the sudden confidence in her voice. She went to retrieve her violin case. "This should be entertaining," Maxwell said to his companions, loud enough for others to hear. "Maybe we can give her some feedback on her hobby." Eleanor returned with her violin. It wasn't expensive, the wood was worn in places showing years of use. As she removed it from the case, she handled it with the care one might give to a precious jewel. She checked the tuning with practiced efficiency and stood in the center of the dining area. "Do you have any requests, Mr. Pierce?" Eleanor asked. Maxwell waved his hand dismissively. "Surprise us. Play whatever you're comfortable with." Eleanor nodded once. "Very well. I'll play Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D major, the first movement." At the corner table, an elderly gentleman's head snapped up in surprise. A few musically educated diners exchanged glances, recognizing one of the most technically demanding pieces in the violin repertoire. Maxwell, however, merely nodded indulgently, unaware of what she had just proposed to play. When Eleanor drew the bow across the strings, time seemed to stop. The first notes flowed like pure crystal, clear, precise, and hauntingly beautiful. There was nothing amateur about the sound that filled the restaurant. It was the confident voice of the violin in the hands of a master, each note perfectly pitched and resonant. As she continued into the more technically challenging passages, Eleanor's fingers moved across the strings with incredible speed and accuracy. The difficult double stops were executed with perfect intonation. The rapid scales and arpeggios cascaded like waterfalls of sound. Maxwell's smirk vanished, replaced by an expression of pure astonishment. His wineglass remained suspended halfway to his lips, forgotten. The guests who had been whispering fell silent. Even the kitchen staff emerged to listen, standing in stunned disbelief as the restaurant filled with music that could belong on the stage of any world-class concert hall. Eleanor's eyes were closed as she played, her body swaying slightly with the music. There was nothing of the humble waitress in her now. She performed with the confidence and precision of a master violinist. The difficult passages that challenged even professional musicians flowed from her fingers effortlessly. The music spoke of profound joy, heartbreaking loss, and triumphant resilience. In the sweeping melodies and intricate passages, listeners could hear a life fully lived, with all its beauty and pain. The elderly gentleman in the corner watched with tears forming in his eyes. Maxwell Pierce sat completely still, his eyes never leaving Eleanor as she played. The arrogance had vanished from his face, replaced by something close to reverence. When the final note faded, There was a moment of complete silence, that magical pause that happens when an audience is so moved they forget to applaud. Then, as if waking from a shared dream, the room erupted in thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, some with tears in their eyes. Maxwell himself stood, a look of complete astonishment on his face. Eleanor simply bowed her head slightly, acknowledging the applause with quiet dignity. That was... Maxwell struggled to find words as he approached her. Who are you? Where did you learn to play like that? Eleanor carefully placed the violin back in its case. I was first violinist with the National Symphony for 27 years, Mr. Pierce. Maxwell blinked rapidly. The National Symphony? In Washington. Eleanor nodded. Yes. I performed with them from 1974 to 2001. The elderly gentleman who had been sitting at the corner table approached them. Eleanor Wilson, he said, extending his hand. I thought I recognized you. Thomas Bennett, Boston Philharmonic. We shared the stage for the Brahms Double Concerto in Baltimore, 1985. Your recording of the Sibelius Concerto is still considered definitive. Thomas? Yes, of course, Eleanor replied with genuine pleasure. The Brahms was with Yo-Yo Ma, if I recall correctly. Music director since 2010, he nodded. And still using your recording to show our violinists how the Sibelius should be played. Maxwell looked between them, confused. I don't understand. If you were a professional violinist, a celebrated one at that, why are you working as a waitress in a small-town restaurant? Eleanor's eyes showed no resentment, just a calm acceptance. Life takes unexpected turns, Mr. Pierce. My husband fell ill 15 years ago. Early onset Alzheimer's. The medical bills took everything. After he passed, I needed steady work with health benefits. This restaurant has been good to me. But your talent, Maxwell began, is still with me, Eleanor finished for him. I play for the local community theater and give lessons to children who can't afford them. I volunteer at the nursing home too. Music isn't just about concert halls and recordings, Mr. Pierce. It's about touching hearts wherever you are. Maxwell fell silent, absorbing her words. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt a creeping sense of shame. Thomas Bennett handed Eleanor his business card. The Philharmonic is doing a special concert series celebrating female composers and performers. We would be honored if you would consider being our guest soloist. Specifically for the Sibelius, no one plays it like you do. Eleanor took the card, genuine surprise showing on her face. It's been many years since I've performed professionally. Some things don't fade with time, Thomas said gently. Talent like yours is one of them. Maxwell stood watching this exchange, his entire worldview shifting. The woman he had tried to humiliate had instead humbled him with her extraordinary talent and dignity. Eleanor, Maxwell said suddenly, his voice softer than before. I owe you an apology. What I did was disrespectful and arrogant. I'm sorry. She regarded him with kind eyes. Apology accepted, Mr. Pierce. But Maxwell wasn't finished. I'd like to make it right. Would you allow me to establish a music scholarship program in your name? 4 talented young musicians who face financial barriers. Eleanor studied him for a moment as if measuring his sincerity. That would be wonderful. Not for me but for the children who need it. I'll have my foundation set it up immediately, Maxwell promised. Would you consider being involved as an advisor or teacher? Eleanor's eyes brightened. I would be honored to help guide such a program. Thomas nodded approvingly. A partnership between your foundation and the Philharmonic's educational outreach could be quite powerful. Excellent idea, Maxwell agreed. He turned back to Eleanor. And please consider Thomas's offer about performing with the Philharmonic. I'd very much like to attend that concert. That evening marked the beginning of significant changes. The Eleanor Wilson Music Foundation was established the following month, providing instruments, lessons and performance opportunities to underprivileged children. Eleanor herself became the artistic director, finally able to devote herself fully to music again. Maxwell discovered something about himself too. Behind his wealth and power games was a man who had once loved music but had forgotten what really mattered in life. He began taking piano lessons again and became one of the foundation's most active supporters, often attending the students' recitals. 3 months later, Eleanor performed the Sibelius Violin Concerto with the Boston Philharmonic. The concert was sold out, with critics and music lovers eager to witness the return of a legend. When she walked onto the stage, the audience rose in a standing ovation before she had played a single note. This time, there was no surprise in her magnificent performance, only the confirmation of her extraordinary gift. The critics raved about her miraculous return and the undiminished power of her playing. The Golden Leaf restaurant now features live classical music every weekend, often showcasing young talents from the Eleanor Wilson Foundation. A small plaque near the entrance tells the story of the evening when a billionaire's joke led to an unexpected symphony of change. Eleanor still plays her old violin, though now she also performs on prestigious stages. She says the most rewarding audiences are still the children in her community classes, who look at her with wonder as she shows them that music, like life, is about perseverance and passion, not wealth or status. Everyone has music inside them, Eleanor often tells her students. The challenge is finding the courage to play it for the world to hear. One evening, about a year after their first encounter, Maxwell attended a student recital. He watched as Eleanor introduced a young girl from a struggling neighborhood, who would play a piece she had composed herself. The child was nervous but determined, clutching a violin that had once belonged to Eleanor. As the girl began to play, Maxwell caught Eleanor's eye from across the room. They shared a smile of understanding, a silent acknowledgement of how a single moment can change everything, how music can bridge divides of class and circumstance, how sometimes the most beautiful symphonies arise from the most unexpected places. Sometimes all it takes is one performance to remind us of what truly matters. And sometimes a joke intended to humiliate can instead illuminate a path to redemption, understanding, and unexpected harmony.